Hello and welcome here. In this video I will show you how I made a swimsuit cover-up skirt that was inspired by the music video of Pink Fantasy's Shadow Play. I've never heard about this group before. This song just popped up in my YouTube recommendations, so I tried to look for some info about them. They debuted in 2019. This song was released this summer in July. This skirt I am trying to recreate is worn by Sangha, and apparently she has left the group this October for personal reasons. I didn't really go into the details why was that, but I hope she's doing fine. Anyway, let's get to work. For this skirt I'm using a curtain. Once in a second-hand shop I came across this fabric and I instantly felt like this will come home with me, it will be a nice skirt, and here we are, it is going to be a skirt. Not sure about the nice thing though, we'll see. When starting to work on this project, I thought it is going to work simply if I just drape the fabric on a slightly wide elastic band, but when I tried it on the dummy, I figured that on the original skirt I can't really see any creases on the waistband, so I decided to change the plan. I had a previously made pencil skirt pattern that I made a copy of so I don't mess up my original pattern. I think it also might work if you trace a random pencil skirt you find in your wardrobe, but if it's made of a stretchy fabric, make sure that later you broaden the waistline large enough that you can make the gathering. The waistband pattern was not pre-made, so I tried to elongate the waist of the skirt somehow and declared it to be the waistband. But I messed it up. Later I will explain how and what I could do to fix it. I have the front of the skirt in one piece, while the back of it is in two pieces. I know it's a common technique in pattern making to cut the pattern at certain places to add volume to some areas by leaving some space between the cut pieces, so that is what I am planning to do with this pattern. I have no idea what is the proper way to do it, but here's what I did. On the front piece I measured the width of the waistline. I wrote it down for later. Then I measured 15 centimeters from the top, at 3 places, both sides and the center. And I measured that curved line too. Any random length works. The point is that I wanted to make an even distance. But it turned out odd. Ba-dum-ts. You got it? 15? Alright, this is odd. So I repeat it twice, going toward the bottom of the skirt. I want to create 6 stripes out of the front piece and other 6 out of the back piece. When I have these measurements jotted next to a fairly lame skirt that I drew myself and didn't bother to draw it again so it would look somewhat presentable, I divide all of these numbers by 6. After going through a quick deposition in the corner of the screen, almost like popping out of nowhere with the final numbers, I start to mark these divided parts on each horizontal line. And here comes the sudden realization in 3, 2, 1. I cannot join these markings with one straight line. I hoped to create evenly divided stripes with this method, but it turns out I need to keep the ones on the sides a bit curvier, I guess. Looking back at this project, I could have tried to link them with the help of my French curves, but a little too late is much too late. My French curves were laying sadly in the drawer and they don't give me the time of day ever since. To sum up my experiment, this method helps to make somewhat even-sized stripes, and this footage is a good reminder for all the fellow ditzy people. Please don't forget about your French curves. This same process was repeated on both halves of the back piece as well. I can also imagine that the correct way to do it is much easier and I overcomplicated, or did I not? I've written F1 to F6 on the stripes. F stands for the front, and the numbers as the stripes follow each other in order. I also put an arrow on the left side that indicates in which direction the numbers are increasing, in case I want to use this pattern later. When I finished, I cut the stripes. I lined up the skirt pieces on the fabric. I drew a slightly visible line with my unicorn pen. I want to follow that curve. And as for the numbers, I realized that the back pieces need to be next to each other without a seam in the center, as the skirt opening will be on the side, or more like on the front side-ish. So I had to rearrange the numbered stripes. I put F4, 5, 6 to the side, and the back together comes here, and then F1, 2, 3. I pinned the top part of all the stripes, and now I'm going to cut it. I'm going to leave 2 centimeters for the seam allowance on the sides. As the stripes are shorter than the actual length I want the skirt to have, I'm going to follow the same straight line and cut it continuously until I reach the bottom edge of my fabric. It's not exactly a straight line, but it's an asymmetrical skirt anyway, and also I'm fine with it not being perfect. I'm repeating the same on the other side. I'm going to remove the pins and the stripes, and we'll try to follow the curve that I previously drew on the fabric. Again, here I will leave a couple of centimeters for the seam allowance. And here's some slow-mo because this fabric was begging for attention. In general, you place the waistband pattern on the fabric in a way that it follows the straight grain. It means when the garment is finished, the straight grain runs horizontally in the waistband around your waist. It is advised to do so as the waistband holds a fair amount of tension, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the way to make it the sturdiest possible, without interface, of course, that strengthens it even more. Anyhow, I decided to place the waistband on the bias. I thought the extra flexibility will do good to the garment. Well, we'll see. Originally, I tried to use this triangle-ish scrap fabric for the waistband, but I decided to trust myself a tiny bit more and sacrifice the other half of the fabric that is still left. Here I am rearranging the parts of the waistband, just as I did with the stripes. The skirt stripes, I need to have the skirt opening on one of the sides. It will be on the right. When I'm ready with sewing the upper seam on the waistband, here I clip these upper corners. I'm going to cut them somehow like this. I turn it inside out. I want to leave this bunch of extra fabric here because I think it's going to give some sturdiness to the waistband. My aim is for this waistband to be stretchy but sturdy at the same time. And now I press it flat with an iron. Also, I'm making a top stitch. It is a stitching that is done really close to the edge and is visible from the right side of the garment. It holds the layers together and makes the edge look sharp and neat. There is this really tall trapeze-shaped fabric that was cut off when I cut the main pattern piece of the skirt. I will use this as the stripe on the center front of the skirt. I'm sewing 2 parallel lines at the end where it's wider. These will help me make the gathering. I made the same with the larger main skirt piece, and here it is on the dummy. I folded the edge of the skirt and fixed it with some safety pins to see where I have to cut it and how wide the hem should be. Here on the right side of the garment, the pieces are slightly touching, while on the left side, the layers are overlapping. Here I will make a curved edge, somehow like this. I adjust the gathering and pull the fabric mostly to the sides. As much as I can see from the MV, there are not many creases on the back, but mostly on the sides. When I'm ready with the adjustments on the gathering, I bring the threads to the same sides and tie some knots on them to finish the seam. I mark the length of the overlapping, then I eyeball and draw the curve I will follow when cutting the final shape on both sides. On the centerpiece, I chop off some excess fabric to make the stripe more lean and somewhat straight. When cutting the fabric, don't forget to leave some extra space for the hem. I also cut the excess fabric from the waist, just above the upper seam that I used for the gathering. And now you can see how I messed up the waistband. It was not supposed to overlap this much, according to my plans, but it's alright, I still can make it work. I mark where the overlapping ends, and I also put tiny marks all over the seam allowance of the skirt and the waistband. These will help me align them correctly. Here I just roughly pin the waistband on the skirt so I can try it on. I think the shape of these slits on the front are fine, but I will have to cut the skirt shorter. I don't want to pull it on the ground. I turn the seam allowance of the waistband inwards and also pin it on the edge of the skirt's waist. When I attach the waistband on the skirt, I bring the threads to the inner side, finish the seams with some knots and make a top stitch, so I'll have two parallel seam lines on the lower edge of the waistband. Then I mark the length and cut the excess fabric. Now it looks like this. The length is definitely better. As it is a lightweight fabric, I will make a rolled hem all over to finish the raw edges. If you want to have a proper and detailed explanation on the rolled hem, there's a link in the description box where I learned it from, actually from a professional who has worked at Burberry and Karl Lagerfeld, just to mention a few, and she is a co-founder of ABC Seams. Her explanation is easy to follow. And as some finishing touches, I attach two necklaces to the front. I also purchased these at a second-hand shop. I fixed them on the skirt with safety pins, so every time I wash the skirt I can remove them. I also sewed on by hand some hook and eye closures on the overlapping area of the waistband, so that's how I can put the skirt on my waist. Here's the finished skirt. I hope it was a helpful tutorial and thanks for watching, especially this far. Bye!